It's now time for the Billy C. Show, part of the BillyCBoxing.com network.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C. Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero. It's time for the Billy C. Show. Good morning, good day, good evening, whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening. I hope you're doing okay today. Today's show is being brought to us in part by, you guessed it, my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to the Best Man on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold. You could actually get a copy of this book while you're watching or listening to this very show, whenever that might be. Just go to Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or drop me an email, Billy@TalkinBoxing. That's TalkinBoxing.com. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by BillyCBoxing.com. Check out the website, all the latest news. And the other thing we try to do is post results of club show fights, which I feel is important to the growth of young fighters. So you get to know them a little bit. So check that out. And today's show is also brought to us in part by all of our stuff. We want you to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and Rumble. Excuse me. Subscribe to YouTube, Rumble, follow us, like I said, on Twitter, like us, all these things. Interact with us on Twitter. Join our Facebook group, Talking Boxing with Billy C. Or you could always drop me an email, Billy@TalkinBoxing, TalkinBoxing.com, and I'll read your email live. Or if you're watching the replay of this very show, tune in live Thursdays, noon Eastern time. I usually kick it off a few minutes early. And come on into the chat room like Love It. She's already in there. So you communicate, be part of the show. We want the interaction. Anyway, coming up on today's show. Look, I've been talking about this forever, why I feel England and the UK pretty much carries professional boxing on their back. So I'm going to give you some reasons why. So I'll be talking about that on today's show. And also, anybody that's been listening to this show for a long time, at least during Anthony Joshua's career, knows that that I am a big fan of AJ. And I'm going to tell you like it is what I felt and feel, what I felt about the performance against Daniel Dubois, and what I feel happened and what will happen. So I'm going to give you the skinny on that coming up. But first, let's get some other things out of the way, like some fight results. Hey, listen, on Friday, before I get to the big fight, on Friday on ESPN, Jaime Munguia fought a really good fight, Eric Bazinian, and Munguia. What an entertaining fight. Munguia won the fight by stopping Bazian in the 10th round at 2 minutes and 36 seconds to improve to 44 wins, 1 loss, the one that came at the hands of Canelo, and 35 wins coming by knockout. And Bazinian drops his first fight of his career. He's now 32-1 with 23 knockouts. Took place in Arizona. It was broadcast on ESPN. First and foremost, I just want to say this. I love Timothy Bradley. He was one of my favorite fighters. But it's starting to get hard to listen to an ESPN broadcast. Not so much Timothy Bradley, because he tells it the way it is. I'm not so sure he tells it like it is, but he'll explain some things, which I like. And he's such a cool guy in person. And we've had him on the show a bunch of times, or at least 2 times, I should say. And, a class act. But watching an ESPN broadcast now Joe Tessitore wasn't on that one, but He was on it. And, the truth of the matter is all they talked about was the stats every single round. They kept bringing up the stats, oh, this one, this, that stat, this stat, and in the beginning of the fight, every stat was against Munguia, right? It didn't matter because from the sixth round on, who cares about the stats? The stats, the punch stats. I don't care how many jabs, how many body shots, how many power shots. It's all subjective based on the guy that's recording the data. But it's good to discuss after the fight is over, not during the fight, and certainly not calling the fight based on what you're looking at with the stats, because it makes them all look like a bunch of jabronis. They're idiots. Give a shout out to my man Joel. I want to thank Joel. He always puts our link up on Thriller TV, and I'd love to do my show live on Thriller. So maybe Joel can do that too. But at the end of the fight, which, like I'm telling you, it was an extremely entertaining fight. Munguia said it was a fight I had to do intelligently. He's strong. He hits hard. So we had to break him down and be careful with the shots to the body. And in the 10th round, that's when I decided to come out with everything. And that's how we got the knockout. He said there's great things to come at 168 pounds. He's mentioned Khalid Plant, Berlanga, Mabili, etc. So, it's I like this kid, and we'll see. My main man, Coach, just popped into the chat room too. Here's my thoughts on Munguia. He's a hard to figure fighter. When he's throwing punches, he looks great. He works the body, he works the head, he releases combinations. I mean, he mixes it all up. He counter punches well. I mean, he looks great. But at times, he looks like he either gets tired, if he's gassed out, or if he loses function of his thought process, or even sometimes he looks hurt. I don't know. It's hard for me to figure him out, because every time I start to think he's tired or he's taking too many shots, the bottom line is that, he comes out and next round he's all exciting. My man Randy Gordon is on his way to Atlantic City. Just popped in the chat room. He's listening to us. Thanks, Randy. I appreciate it. I wish we had more time to chat at the Hall of Fame a couple weeks ago. And in an interesting heavyweight fight on that card, Joey Dewejko is a guy. I'll never forget a plane ride with him. If you ever see me in person, remind me to tell you about a plane ride with Joey. We called one of his fights in Chicago, and on the way back, it was the scariest plane ride ever. And I'll never forget him and his father. They were sitting across the aisle from me. But anyway, Richie Torres Jr. improved to 11-0 when he scored a fifth round disqualification over the Tank. 2 minutes and 2 seconds in the fifth round. So that took place on Friday, right? And then Saturday, I'm going to leave the main fight for last, because I have a lot of comments about it. First and foremost, Anthony Kakachi, the IBF super featherweight champion, which IBF's belt was not on the line, only the IBO, improved to 23-1 with 8 knockouts when he defeated former two-time featherweight champ Josh Warrington, who drops 31-3 with a draw. The scores were 117-111, 118-110, 117-11. And then Joshua Butasi improved to 19-0 with 13 knockouts when he won a 12-round split decision over Willie Hutchinson, who drops to 18-2 with 13 knockouts. This was a strange fight because Butasi, in my opinion, won it. I mean, easily. Here's the scores. 115, 110, 117, 108. I believe that the score was closer. I didn't score this fight, but by watching the fight, I believed it was closer to 117, 108. And then all of a sudden, the judge had it 113, 112 for Hutchinson, which was, every so often you get these scores that you just scratch your head, and I see them so much. I don't have any hair in that spot anymore. But in any event, also in the junior middleweight, super welterweight division, Josh Kelly improved to 16-1 with a draw with 8 knockouts when it took him a full length fight to take care of the last minute sub in Ishmael Davis, who lost for his first time. He's 13-1 with 6 knockouts, 115, 113, 115, 114. And one judge had it even at 114, 114. Very close fight, entertaining fight. And then Shiraz, Hamaz Shiraz won by a second round stoppage, 2 minutes and 5 seconds, when he destroyed Tyler Denny to improve to 21-0 with 17 knockouts. Denny drops to 19 wins, 3 losses, and 3 draws with 1 knockout. A lot of fanfare about Shiraz. I think he still needs a lot of work, to tell you the truth. He looks clumsy in there. I enjoy watching him, though, but I think he needs a lot of work. I hope they don't rush him. And then in a fight that opened up the card, as you know, Turki Al-Rashid has made no secret that he loves Mark Chamberlain, and they put him in with a real scrappy fighter, Josh Padley. I don't know if you caught this fight. It wasn't on the official pay-per-view, but Chamberlain went into this fight 16-0 with 12 knockouts. Padley went into this fight 14-0 with 4 knockouts. And when you looked at their resumes, you'd said to yourself, well, Padley didn't fight nearly the level of opposition Chamberlain, and he was moving up in weight, and he looked like he was 5 weight classes smaller in the ring. But let me tell you, this scrappy little fighter, Josh Padley, put a good old-fashioned take you behind the woodshed ass whooping on Mark Chamberlain to improve to 15-0 with 4 knockouts. Chamberlain loses for the first time in his career. He drops to 16-1 with 12 knockouts. It was a pretty entertaining fight. Okay, so the main event, right? I was wrong with my prediction. I'll get to an email later. I told you guys how much I like Daniel Dubois, but I didn't think that he would destroy Anthony Joshua the way he did. Daniel Dubois solidified his ownership of the IBF World Heavyweight title. He improved to 22 wins, 2 losses, with 21 wins coming by knockout, in which he picked up his 21st knockout over Anthony Joshua, who drops to 28-4 with 25 knockouts. He was dropped not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times in front of 96,000 people, which, makes me tell you and reiterate how many times that I've said that England carries boxing on its back. I'm going to get to that in a second. I want to talk a little bit about Anthony Joshua. Anybody that's been watching this show for as long as Anthony Joshua has been a fighter knows that I've been a big fan of his. The guy seemingly had it all right? Yes, his chin was always suspect, and he showed us that last Saturday night. But what bothered me the most about this fight, first of all, credit to Daniel Dubois. Let's give Daniel Dubois credit. I told you guys, even though I predicted that AJ was going to win the fight, I said, don't write off Daniel Dubois because he's only 26 years old, 27, 26, 27, something like that. And I believe that he was rushed a little too quickly, and he's improving with every fight. I mean, we see it. The controversial loss to Usyk, many people believe, including myself, that it was not a low blow. It was right on the belt line, and maybe he should be the guy that was fighting Tyson Fury in a rematch. But nonetheless, that's not what unfolded. And he, too, was criticized for his chin. But in his fight against Miller, he demonstrated to me that he does have a decent chin, and he's getting better. Some of his problems is defensively. I'm talking about Dubois. He goes in there and he leaves himself wide open. What bothered me about Anthony Joshua is he acted like he's never fought before. He was getting no instruction from his corner. 0. I didn't hear anything. He didn't use his jab. What happened to his jab? He had a 4-inch reach advantage. Why wouldn't he be using his jab? His jab would have set up the right hand. Daniel Dubois' head is right there. And Daniel Dubois, by the way, if you're listening, you need to work on head movement. If you can work head movement into your repertoire, you're going to be a tough guy to beat. Because guess who he reminded me of in this fight with Anthony Joshua? I thought I was watching Mike Tyson. He was all over Anthony Joshua, and Anthony Joshua had no response. And when he was hurt, what's the first thing you learn as a fighter if you're hurt and the round is early in the round and you got to survive more than a minute, more than 2 minutes? What do? You hold the F on. That's what you do. You hold them up. You tie them up. You let the referee break you up. You try to get your legs back. You try to use your jab. Use the 4-inch reach advantage. Keep him at bay. Let him chase you down. That gets a fighter tired when they're chasing him around. Anthony Joshua didn't do any of that. He didn't try to hold on. Didn't even throw his jab. He tries to macho it out and trade with this guy when he couldn't even stand. He was doing the Billy C dance after 20 scotches. I mean, come on. I was very disappointed in the whole team of Anthony Joshua because he wasn't getting any instruction in the corner, and he was fighting very unintelligently. I mean, this is a guy who has been up and down. He had a brilliant amateur career. He's had his ups and downs in the pros, and he's demonstrated to us all that he does possess this ability to use his jab, set up that power right hand. And he didn't do it. If you watch this fight, the punch that knocked out Anthony Joshua, the final punch that finished him, just before that punch, he landed a hellacious shot on Daniel Dubois. That punch should have dropped any other human being. I'm shocked that Daniel Dubois didn't even go down after that punch. And then he followed up with his that knocked down and out Anthony Joshua. Alex Papali talked to me after the fight. He says, "Oh my God, did you see that punch?" He said that would have killed a rhinoceros. Yeah, it would have from Anthony Joshua, but the guy wasn't setting himself up correctly. I was very disappointed in this fight for Anthony Joshua, not just because he lost, because that's the beauty of the heavyweight division. Anybody can have a night like Daniel Dubois had. Anybody in the heavyweight division can have a night like that. When all the heavyweights have power, they can knock the shit out of an opponent at any given time. And as a heavyweight fighter and as a professional fighter, you got to be ready for that power shot. Anthony Joshua seemed very unprepared, in my opinion. Like he was shocked that Daniel Dubois was coming at him with all guns a-blazing. And Daniel Dubois reminded me of Mike Tyson. He was swarming over Anthony Joshua, and Anthony Joshua had no answers. Very disappointed, and it was very amateuristic of AJ, in my opinion. What do I think happens next? Honestly, in my opinion, Anthony Joshua has nothing left to prove. If it were me, if he were my fighter, I would say, AJ, maybe it's time to hang him up. Go enjoy life. You're still a young man. You got, boatloads of cash. You got nothing left to prove. But if he wants to continue his career like he said he wants to, I think this sets up a Deontay Wilder fight. I mean, I think there's still a demand for it. You got two fighters that, pretty much the boxing world have written off, and they're both power punchers, and let's get them in the ring. And the winner might get another shot. The loser is definitely done, but they both get another big payday. It's a fight I've always wanted to see, and I'd like to see it again. And to tell you the truth, if the version of Anthony Joshua that showed up for Daniel Dubois steps in the ring with Deontay Wilder, now, even though Deontay Wilder has no boxing skill except for punching power, all he's got to do is land one of those shots, and AJ's in trouble, especially if he doesn't do what you're supposed to do, But it's pretty. James is in there. You can drink 20 scotches, yeah, when I get going, bro. And that was the dance that I thought that he was doing. That's what I look like after 20. Usually I keep it to one or two, but that's what I think. And that's my segue into why I feel England carries boxing on its back. Look, I've been saying this for a long time, but there's a lot of reasons. First and foremost, boxing really, look, the history of boxing, you can go all the way back to the Roman times. There was actually drawings on caves where they show a fighter with one glove and one bare hand. So you could go back to that time. But when they started, really following James Broughton, which was a fencer, he started boxing, came up with the Broughton rules, and they started following that. And this was in the 1700s. Okay. They followed that and the rules were very primitive then. And this is in England, right? The rules were primitive. You couldn't gouge out the eyes, right? You couldn't gouge out the eyes. And when a fighter was down, that was the end of a round, and then you could get up, right? They fine-tuned that with the London prize rules, and followed that with Marquis of Queensberry rules. And then, here's where we are today with the rules that we have today. But it started in England. As a matter of fact, my guy, Tom Molyneux, in case you're wondering about him, you can buy my book. He was a guy that was an American fighter. And during that time, when Tom Cribb was the world he was the champion of England. As far as anybody that followed boxing, Tom Cribb was the man. And the United States version of bare knuckle boxing was a little rough and tumble at the time. And when Tom Molyneux went over there and fought him, it was technically the first world title fight because it was a non-English fighter fighting an American fighter. And, if you read my book, you'll hear all the reasons why I feel that the history is not written correctly. But so my point is that the sport as we know it today, at least the beginnings of how we know it today, started in England. That's one reason I feel that, England carries boxing on its back. The other, several others, the fighters. The fighters in England, they're willing to fight each other and they're not afraid of a loss. And I got to be honest, every time I see a English fight that, they're putting domestic fighters against each other, very rarely do I see a fighter that I would say, he doesn't have much heart. All these guys have heart. The fans, you've heard me talk about it. The fans are, James Figg. Coach is saying, James Figg was another one. But the Broughton rules, Broughton was the first one. James Figg was after that. But anyway, the father of boxing, they call him. But anyway, the fans in England are much more knowledgeable of the sport of boxing, in my opinion. And when I say that, I mean that these are fighters. The fans follow the fighters, and they come out in droves. When you watch a fight in England, the stands are usually full, and they're singing and having a great time. And it's a diversified crowd. You've heard me say this before. There's young kids there. There's older people there. There's men. There's women there. A lot of times in when you look at a United States fight, a big one, it's like a glamour show. Everybody shows up. I mean, it started. You go back and watch the fights. The Ali fights with Frazier and stuff, and you see some of the get-ups these guys had on, and it's like a fashion show. They're more interested in hoping the camera's on them, and the British fans seem to be out having a good time and watching what's in front of them, and they follow their fighters, and they're loyal to their fighters. Fighter loses, they don't abandon them. Fighter in the United States loses, and next thing you know, you're hearing, that was a bum. He was a bum. He was exposed. And they bail on him. And the fans in the United States, they look at fighters' records and they say, oh, he's got 5 losses. He's garbage. And the fans in England, they're a little smarter than that. They know that those 5 fights might have been against, opposition that maybe that fighter shouldn't have been fighting at that point. And a good example is Daniel Dubois. He was moved pretty quickly. I mean, Joe Joyce beat him, and Joe Joyce, no disrespect to him, but he's as slow as molasses. And anybody that's got some talent could outbox him as long as you don't get caught. He's got some power. The promoters in England actually promote. Coach sent me a couple of commercials, which are like short videos. They promoted this last card that we saw with Daniel Dubois beating Anthony Joshua. They're promoting the Beterbiev and Bivol fight, like the Thrones. So I mean, the fighters have fun making these commercials and short videos, and the fans are into it. And it's just, it gets them jacked up, and you wonder why you could sell out an arena with 96,000 people. I mean, the other thing I like about the British boxing is the British Boxing Board of Controls, the BBOC. Here's the problem. In the United States, we have the states, and in each state, you have a commission, and although they follow the ring rules, the commissions vary, okay, and the medicals vary. They don't have standardization with that. So you might have a fighter that can fight in Nebraska who's not allowed to fight in New York or New Jersey because they don't have the medicals and all this stuff. Now, New York, when I promoted in New York commission paid for the medicals. They don't do that anymore. So now for a promoter to adhere to the rules of the state of New York, like New Jersey and Nevada, those 3 are extremely strict with the medical requirements and the fighters, who they're allowed to fight. So for a promoter to promote a fight, it's extremely expensive. So they don't do the club shows anymore. They can't afford it. So, they can't afford to lay out the money for a 6, 8, 10 fight card and have all those medicals done in a 500 seat arena. I used to do shows in Arkansas, okay, and we'd have an arena that could fit 200, 300 people max, and we were still able to make a few dollars on the card. There's no way you can do that in the state of New York. Nobody's going to buy a ticket for $500. I don't care who's fighting, So they've ruined the club shows in those states, New York specifically. I'm talking about New York because I'm in New York. And, when you go back in time, New York was the hub of boxing. Most of the fighters fought. They wanted to go to Madison Square Garden. Even my point about England carrying boxing on their back, the fighters still want to come here to the United States, which I think is starting to change. The BBBC, you look at a fighter, and a lot of these English records, and I've discussed this with fight fans, they go, well, look at the guy's record. Look, he started his fight, his second pro fight, he fought a guy with a 5 wins, 76 losses, and 3 draws. What the hell? What a bum. No, it's not a bum. It's a guy that's an opponent. It's a professional opponent. But a guy with 80-something fights, 90 fights, whether he lost most of them or not, knows his way around the ring. Well, he knows what the canvas feels like, I'll tell you that. But I mean, he helps a young fighter. He helps a young fighter learn. Yes, he's going to lose the fight, but the truth of the matter is it helps these guys develop their own skill set. In the United States, a lot of times you have one-sided fights, and the fighter's not learning anything. I see a lot of improvement with the English fighters. When the English fighters start getting up, when they start climbing the ranks domestically, and they start getting a name, they start getting a following, and they start increasing their level of opposition, which they do, you see the improvements. I mean, Nick Ball, the Wrecking Ball. I mean, here's a guy that he's going to be fighting soon. Ronnie Rios, I believe he's fighting. This is a kid that is extremely fun to watch. But now the first time I watched this guy, he looked just like the Tasmanian devil throwing punches. I mean, who knows where they're going to land, Hey, Tyson Fury. I remember Thomas Newman was our UK correspondent at the time, and he said on the show, "Hey, Billy C, make sure you check out this new heavyweight over in England." I think it was his second or third pro fight. And he sent me a link, and I watched every Tyson Fury fight since then. And I watched the improvement. If you go back and watch Tyson Fury fight, he used to throw his jab downward, and the reason is because he was fighting guys so much smaller than him. And as he got better, he had to make an adjustment with his jab to fight, to throw a jab, the way he should. You could see that transition, so to speak, when he fought, what's his name? The light heavyweight. I'm going blank here. But he got dropped by an uppercut. Coach, help me out here. But in any event, he improved with that. Even Klitschko, not that he's a British fighter, but same thing. Manny Stewart helped him learn how to fight guys that were bigger, not bigger than him, but bigger than his usual opponent. But they improved. My point is they kept improving. And that's what, yes, thanks, James. Steve USS Cunningham was the fighter. I just totally went blank. It's what happens when you get old. But the truth of the matter is, I saw a transition with Tyson Fury after that fight. It was almost like he had extreme trouble fighting smaller guys. And then after that fight, he worked on it. And you saw him fight a couple of other smaller height-wise guys, and he's ultimately improved. Now he's well-versed fighting, guys that's similar size or smaller or round, fat guys, movement guys, that's what you do. And that's what they used to do back in the day. Back in the day, and I'm talking back in the day, not in the 80s, further back, a guy would learn how to fight a southpaw. So what do? He fights 10 southpaws. One guy's a fast fighter. One guy, can move. One guy's a power puncher. One guy's short. One guy's tall. One guy, is a body puncher, all southpaws. And then after 10 of these fights against southpaws, now you say, oh, yeah, okay. He knows how to fight a southpaw. In the U.S., you don't see that. A lot of times you go, he's never fought a southpaw. So they throw him in with a southpaw. Oh, yeah, he knows how to fight southpaw. He was sparring southpaws. We had southpaws in sparring for the whole time, so he knows how to. Bullshit. That's not what happens. And this is why, I'm so high on England and the fight. I just, for shits and giggles, I went and looked. This weekend there's at least a dozen fights in England alone, all different levels of fights, and you wonder, how these guys get the experience because they fight a lot. And these little clubs, they sell out. They have the support. The promoters promote. The managers manage. The fighters fight. Hello, that's the way it's supposed to be, and we're starting to see it now. We're starting to see a movement that is that's very hard to ignore. All right, and of course, Turki Al-Rashid is a guy that is changing it, and this is a man that is investing in actually promoting. A promoter's job is not only just to promote the fighter, but to promote himself, the promotional company. And it's a brand. So a good promoter will promote that brand and then the fighter that's under his brand, right? And the only way to do that is grassroots promoting. And that's what I was talking about at the beginning of the show. If you missed it, you got on our website. All right. I try to get the results from as many club shows as I can. because these are the guys that you want to get to know because somebody will scap them up. You can also, hey, I'm going to give coaches website a plug too. Check it out, strictlybusinessboxing.com. But the whole truth of the matter is you got to promote. Promoters got to promote. Today, a lot of American promoters will get a fighter, and what do you see happening? The fighter gets on social media and starts promoting the fight himself. Why do you suppose in the U.S. we see so many retread fighters that you've heard of the name, but they haven't been in the top for years, and yet all of a sudden they're on a fight card? We saw it with Danny Garcia. No disrespect to Danny, I love Danny Garcia, but it was a payday, and people recognize the name, and that's what I call a lazy ass promoter, because a real promoter would be introducing us and the rest of the fan base they'll be introducing us to a new fighter and let us learn about this fighter. Tell us something about this fighter. You got this guy, Fisher, Johnny Fisher, a heavyweight out of England. Well, I'm starting to read all kinds of stuff about Johnny Fisher. That's called promotion. And that's what England does. And the United States are lazy ass promoters. Hate to say it, but it's true. The last great promoter was Don King. Don King would make you feel that, if you weren't getting his fight, if you weren't buying a ticket, if you weren't buying a pay-per-view, you were missing out on something. And he would keep going at it until the day of the fight. And it makes you say to yourself, I got to go watch it. You don't hear none of that. A lot of fights aren't even. I have people that email me and call me and like, what's going on? Are there any fights this weekend? Yeah, man, you haven't heard about the such and such fight? I said, no, I haven't, because they don't promote it. If you're not tied into the fighter's social media account, you're not hearing about it. It's sad. It's sad. And thank God for England, because, when you look at the English boxing scene, they always have fights. They always have entertaining fights. They always have fans that are following the fights. And I got news for you. Not only are those fans good and knowledgeable, they travel. They ever watch an English fighter fight here in the States? They got guys with singing and drinking beer all day that travel from England to support their fighter. We don't do that here. Hey, look, I'm just as guilty as the rest of us Americans. If I see a fight that's out in Vegas and, I'm invited, hey, come on out to the fight, and I say to myself, oh, shit, I got to get on a plane. I got to go here. I got to go there. I got to, have dinner. I got to, what? How much is the pay-per-view? I'll sit home and watch it. Have 19 scotches. James is telling 20 scotches. But, it's just the way it is. It's, and then now, people are starting to criticize His Excellency, Turki Al-Rashid. And I say to myself, why? Here's a guy that, is throwing money into it. Is he making any money? Who the hell knows? I don't know if he's making any money. I don't know if they're printing it back or whatever. I don't know if this is just a hobby for him or whatever. But guess what? He's making shit happen. He's talking about trying to get a card and make these fights. Check out these fights that I saw that he's trying to make. Of course, the rematch with Usyk and Tyson Fury. That's coming in December. He too agrees with what I said. Anthony Joshua against Deontay Wilder. I think it's a sellable fight. How about Daniel Dubois against Joseph Parker? That's an interesting fight. Joseph Parker knows how to box. He was in there with Zhang or Zhang, I should say, and got up off the canvas, I think, twice in that fight to win. And Daniel Dubois, he's look, Daniel Dubois is in a position to rule the heavyweight division. And I say that, and I mean it. And the reason why I say that I think he's in a position to rule the heavyweight division is because he's getting better. He hasn't reached his ceiling yet, and if you got a guy that just destroyed Anthony Joshua. And like I said earlier in the show, I feel that Anthony Joshua probably put on one of his worst performances. And when I say that, it's not so much him getting his ass kicked. I'm saying he put on his worst performance because he didn't have any answers. He sounded he looked in that ring like it was his first fight. He did everything that you're not supposed to do. Daniel Dubois, he made those mistakes too, but he's learning from them and he's getting better and better. I like that fight. And then he's got Zong against Bacoli. How about that fight? Two slow moving, big puncher guy. I mean, if he could put these guys, all four of these fights on one card, obviously that can't happen with Usyk and Fury. I believe that card is already in the works. But could you imagine if these four fights were on one card, all heavyweights? I mean, would that be the best heavyweight card ever? I mean, it certainly would be the best one in the last 20 some odd years. I can't think of a better heavyweight card than that. Even the heavyweight tournament of the 80s and 90s was nowhere near that, you know. And when you speak of His Excellency Turki Al-Rashid, now all of a sudden you're hearing Dana White. Dana White. He's been teasing us that he's going to get into boxing for a long time, right? But he said recently, and I'll quote, Dana White said, there's going to be some big announcements coming soon. And let me tell you, if you know anything about me and you go back and look at anything I've ever said, I never say anything that I don't do. We've been kicking the whole boxing thing around for a long time, but you've never heard me commit and say, I'm in. Well, I'm in. That's huge. That's huge for me. Dana White, everything he seems to touch turns to gold. Now, here's the one problem I see. You know, Dana White's success with the UFC really created a lot of the division that we have in the sport of boxing today. I've always said, if you go back and listen to my shows, I've been preaching this for a very long time, that boxing needs unity. It does not need division. But what we got, and a lot of it is due to Dana White's success with the UFC, similar to Floyd Mayweather's success in cherry picking opponents and stuff. A lot of fighters try to emulate that and, you know, try to reap the benefits that Floyd did. But the truth of the matter was there's one Floyd. He did it, and people should, you know, try to create their own path. Well, I feel the same way about promoters. You know, the promoters today see the success that Dana White had by forming the UFC, which is a league, and you have more control over the fighters and who they fight and when they fight, et cetera, the pay, all those things. Well, that's what promoters started to do. That's when we saw the era it started probably 15 years ago, and it's just seemingly coming to an end now, where only fighters within a promotional company would fight their own fighters in a promotional company. Look, it was always the case. But when the big fights were around, Bob Arum and Don King, they're not just 95 and 93-year-old guys, right? They hated each other. And I don't care, you know, they're too old to hate each other now. But back in the day, they made the fights when the fights were there. Do you realize that during the heyday of Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Marvin Hagler, Roberto Duran, you know, the Super Four, you know, the Four Kings or whatever they called, you know, those guys were making, you know, $5-10 million back then for a fight. That fizzled out. Now we're seeing, you know, fighters making big bucks again, but they're not fighting the big fights. A good example is the fight that was just announced that's taking place November 9th. Jaron Boots Ennis. Everybody's saying he's the next great thing, right? How great he is. Everybody criticizes Terrence Crawford. Oh, he's not fighting Boots. He's not fighting Boots. Oh, Boots is the man. Boots. You know, you know, if his name was Sneakers, would he run? I don't know, but his name is Boots, and he's 32-0 with 29 knockouts. He's going to Philly. He's the main event, and he's going to defend his IBF title against, you think, a big name, right? You know, Karen Chukadzeyan. You know, he's got an impressive record, 24 wins and 2 losses with 13 knockouts. but this isn't going to be some big knockout, drag out fight. So you're talking shit about how great you are, Boots. And you sign with Eddie Hearn, I believe, and everybody's talking how great he is. He's going to do all these things, and the big headline show that he gets is against the guy that people don't care if he fights. I mean, this is my problem. Put him in against somebody that matters and get the fanfare. These guys, they fight 3 times a year against, iffy competition. And we're supposed to give them the Fighter of the Year award because they fought 3 times. This is the problem with the United States boxing scene. They don't do that in England. They're fighting tougher fights. We don't know as much about the fighters because we're not watching it on our local TV like they get to. And follow it and go to the shows and all of this. This is why I wish that I could be in England at some point. I doubt I'll ever get that opportunity at this stage, but that's where it's at. Could you imagine? I couldn't imagine being ringside for that Dubois Anthony Joshua fight in front of 100,000 people, just about 100,000. I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, that. And then they have that stupid, what's his name, the MMA guy. I can't stand that DAZN even has him. He doesn't know a left hook from a fish hook, and he's just annoying. He's right up there with Mario Ronaldo to me. I have a hard time watching. The only thing that I like about this card is that Jesse Bam Rodriguez is on it. But again, he's taking on Pedro Guerrera, 42-4. You got these guys that are breakthrough names, right? They're superstardom, and you put them in against, marginal opposition. Now, why? You say to yourself, why? Do you think the fighter is afraid to fight? I don't think that. I don't think a fighter is afraid to fight. I think, truthfully, anybody that has the balls to put on gloves and get in the ring and fight will fight anybody. That's the truth. But the reason that they set these fights up is the exact reason why I like the English boxing scene. The English boxing scene, you have 2 fighters, so let's say 2 middleweights, and they're both rising to the top. They both have a big fan following. One's from one side of the country, the other one's from the other side, and it becomes a domestic rivalry, and they fight. One guy wins, the other one loses. Is that the end of the guy's career that loses? Not in England, it's not. But in the States, it is sometimes. And that's why these lazy-ass promoters put these fighters in with marginal opposition, because they're afraid that they're going to lose the O. Why are they afraid they're going to lose the O? Because here in the United States, the O is the captain. The O is the thing that drives it. The fans, specifically the young fans, they value the O. They don't look at the names. They look at the O. He's undefeated. He must be good. And so you get a guy with talent like Boots and, of course, Bam Rodriguez. They're both talented fighters. Anybody that tells you that they're not doesn't know the sport, right? Well, put them in with somebody good. Let's see it. Let's see them fight their best. Everybody knows I don't like Floyd Mayweather. But one of the main reasons I don't like him is because I don't believe we ever got to see the best of Floyd Mayweather. Early in his career, he was extremely exciting and stuff, but are we to assume that that was the best Floyd? I think that we were dissed. I think Floyd kept the best Floyd from us because he cared about the cherry picking and the O. And as a result, he's obviously not the best now, and I don't think he's the best ever anyway. But I think that fight fans that are paying his bills, that are buying his pay-per-views, that are buying tickets to his events, and I'm not just saying him, any fighter, the fan deserves those fighters to show us the best that they can be. And in England, it seems to me that those fighters and their promoters and their fans are all on the same page. And here in the States, not so much. Back to Dana White real quick. I would love to see him team up with His Excellency Turki Al-Rashid. If those two team up, watch out. Boxing's going to change, and it will change for the better. another thing I wanted to bring up, and this backs up what I was saying for a while about the WBA. The WBA. Well, before I say this, just some comments, and I'm sorry, I was off on a tangent, so I missed some of these comments. But Lovett says boxing absolutely needs unity. I agree. Team Batman, my man, says I don't think Dana will do much in boxing. Really pays the athletes terribly. Yeah, but you know what? He can get away with that in the UFC. I don't think he's going to be able to get away with that. And if he teams up with Turki Al-Rashid, who has been paying these fighters fairly, you'll see the fights happen. So I think from that respect, Batman boxing that'll be good. Coach says U.S. Stoll, UK amateur standout coach Billy Walsh. You know what? I will say this. If some of the UK fighters adopted some of the US style and still maintained the rest of what I'm talking about with the UK, nobody would beat UK fighters. I mean, let's be real. The US style and a lot of the trainers that we do have, or we used to have, taught a much better style. The problem is they don't use it. They don't fight the fights that we want to see. Grievous says lots of Floyd's opponents were past their best. That's what I mean. He was cherry picking. Joel says, did you know Elisa Baumgartner is fighting Daphne Pursun this Saturday in Georgia? We're assuming it. No, I didn't. I didn't know that. Look, I was involved with Chevelle Halbach. Together, we won multiple. She won the titles in the ring, but I was with her. We won multiple world titles in 2 different weight classes, and we had a great run. We traveled all over. But women's boxing, to me, Clarissa Shields ruined it for me. And I'm not too high on it right now. There's a world title fight this weekend in England. David Diamante is on his way, I think, as we speak. He's on a plane right now. That they're going to show it on the Zone. So, look, it's the topic of my show today. I agree with Grievous. It is a little boring. It used to not be. They used to really, when women's boxing, when Chevy was in her prime and women's boxing was at its peak, you had some really good fighters. And what I used to love about women's boxing is that they were willing to fight each other, and they had to do it in 2 minutes a round. And the fight started from the opening bell, and you were watching a fight. Over the last several years, they've copied a lot of what the men do. They don't fight the tough fights. They fight safety first, which, it's their prerogative. But, they can't have their own cards, Grievous, because they tried that, and they didn't do that well. And the other thing, too, the streaming services, look, streaming is here to stay. It's basically just it's broadcasting, right? But the pay-per-view model is what's preventing boxing to ever have a shot at mainstream sports again. The pay-per-view model has to stop. It really does. And once promoters do look, a promoter like Jimmy Birchfield, all right, and Jimmy Birchfield's been doing this for a long time. He's one of the best. As a matter of fact, I'm going to get Jimmy on this show. He's been on this show a bunch, and we've talked, and he'd love to come on. I'm going to have him on the show. And the reason why I'm going to have him on the show is because Jimmy Birchfield is one of the last grassroots promoters that you're going to find. He's in the Rhode Island area, New England area, and he's out there. They're selling tickets. They're selling sponsorships. And, sometimes their fighters will be Joe DeGuardia from Star Boxing is another one, grassroots promoter, right? Joe, not as much as Jimmy. But they're knocking on doors. They're selling tickets. They have the local body shop, the local restaurant supports the fighters. That's what I mean by grassroots, and that's when communities get involved with the fighters. You don't see that. The promoters today say, well, we'll throw it out. We'll make it a pay-per-view for $9.95. People will buy it. No, they don't. They don't. But the way to do it is the way we did it. I hate to say, LDL TV, John Musciunas, and it was, we did it. Me, Carl King, and of course the late great Sal Rocky Senecola through LDL TV. We gave the fight. We streamed it for nothing. The way you make some money is you sell advertising. So if you get the viewership and you start building up a fighter, you get a young kid who starts out and you start streaming his professional fights and let everybody watch it. Well, not only is the guy locally going and buying a ticket, but now you introduce this same fighter to a worldwide audience, and you build it up. And then when he has a significant fight, maybe for a title, a regional title, whatever, that's when you charge a pay-per-view. And then you'll get the buys. I mean, come on. The WBA, I have said, is the worst. All right. Well, I don't know if you caught this, but Fres Oquendo, if you've been following boxing for any length of time, you've heard the name Fres Oquendo. He was a heavyweight contender, was always in good shape, his weakness was his chin, but I didn't realize that he's been battling with the WBA for the last decade. Okay. Now, in a nutshell, he fought Ruslan Chagaev. Now, I used to love Ruslan Chagaev. I thought he was a good heavyweight. When we first started doing this show all those years ago, Ruslan Chagaev was one of the top heavyweights. And, he fought him in Russia. And it was, they got held at gunpoint. They got robbed. They got all this stuff, right? And the WBA subsequently, according to Team Oquendo, dropped them from the rankings, and his career was over. Well, he just won the federal lawsuit, and now he's going to go after the WBA. And rumor has it that he's going to continue his boxing career. He's 51 years old. I don't know if that's a smart idea, but he's been training, he's been sparring with people, and we'll see what happens. But this is what I'm saying about these sanctioning bodies. Look, the sanctioning bodies, and they all do it. The WBC, many people regard them as the top one, but they only care about the WBC. They won't recognize a fighter that's in another sanctioning bodies if they're a champion or whatever. That's half the problem. I came up with an idea that it could work. We could create a league for professional boxing, and we could make it work with the current top 4 sanctioning bodies. I have a whole system I developed of how it would work and how the fighters could make money and how the sanctioning bodies could still keep their claws into boxing and make money. So if anybody wants to sit down and talk to me about it, I know it would work. All right. I know it would work. And people have talked about all kinds of ideas, but I know that my idea would work to create a league for boxers, including all the sanctioning bodies and purse protection and all that stuff. So I got an email from my man Rick, and this is a pretty cool email because this was written Saturday morning before the fight, before the Dubois and Anthony Joshua fight. And he writes, what's up, Billy C? Congratulations on your induction into the New York State Boxing Hall of Fame and your new belt. I had the belt here, and I appreciate it. I did get a lot of accolades online, and I thank everybody for it. He said, sorry I couldn't attend, but I recently relocated to Kuwait for work. I told him I was just going to read the bottom part, but I think that this is cool. So sorry, Rick. He says, so I probably won't be catching your show live anymore due to the time difference, but I'm going to be watching all the uploads. He says, speaking of which, I'm about an hour's plane ride away from Saudi Arabia right now, And I plan to start attending the fights in Riyadh when I have the days off from work. Hopefully, I'll be there for Bivol and B2B. Look, man, that might be the fight of the year. It certainly seems like it. But it is what it is. I wish I could see, Coach. I disagree. He says we need to return to CBS, NBC, and Wild World of Sports Boxing. Wild World of Sports Boxing, yes, when they got rid of it, but CBS and NBC, they don't want any part of it. I don't think that traditional TV is going to be around much longer. I think it's all streaming. And if you follow the bouncing streaming ball, everybody tells you, "Oh, cut the cord, cut the cable cord." Well, here's the problem. Once these streaming companies got to get to a certain size, and now you got to pay for them. So if you want the Netflix and you want all the other thing, you're subscribing to this one. You add it all up, you might as well keep cable, So I said this, and Coach probably remembers. I know Joel will remember, and Rick here would definitely remember. I said that the future of sports entertainment will be a platform where you can pick out the sports you want and subscribe to that and see everything. So if you like boxing, like me, I'm boxing, football, baseball, right? Those are my sports, right? And so at some point, I'm going to be able to go to a provider and say, boxing, football, baseball. That's all I care to watch. And Turner Classic Movies. I'm an old movie guy. I don't even watch anything that's newer than 1978. And you pay for that, but you pay for that service, and you get it all. You get every boxing match that's available. You get every football game, whether it's pro, college, UFL, whatever. Same thing with baseball. And I'm a happy camper. I don't need anything else. You give me that service, whatever it costs, I'm going to pay, and I'm going to be happier than a pig in shit. But it's coming because it's in drips and drabs right now. But anyway, he says, let me know if you ever think you can make it out for a big fight. Listen, all I can say is this, Rick. I'm only a phone call away from anybody that wants me to come out. Bring me out there. I'll do my show out there. I'll do whatever I can. I would love. Well, England's number one, but I would love to catch one of those big events in Saudi Arabia. He says, I know how much you love Bud Crawford, and I want him to get the Canelo fight. But what did you think of David Benitez saying he'd be glad to step in for Canelo and take on Bud? I instantly thought the ending to the movie in Tombstone when Ringo challenged Wyatt Earp to the final duel, but Doc Holliday showed up instead, and Ringo looked like he was going to shit himself. Let me just say this. The whole thing about Terence Crawford and Canelo, my opinion on the fight is it's just that particular fight. I'm not saying Crawford should be fighting at super middleweight. I don't even think he should be fighting at junior middleweight, to be honest with you. I think that his last fight indicated that. I would rather have seen a Boots Ennis fight against Terence Crawford, okay? But the significance of Terence Crawford fighting Canelo is strictly for, legacy. Canelo kind of secured a legacy. He went up in weight. He beat Kovalev. That fight, I was lucky enough to be ringside for that fight. That was a huge legacy fight for him. Winning the light heavyweight, even though he's, a super middleweight now. I mean, realistically, he's probably a better middleweight. I mean, there's nobody in the middleweight division who's going to beat Canelo. And one of the top super middleweights beat him in Bivol, or Bivol's a light heavyweight, but he could make super middleweight easily. He's a small guy. That's why I'm leaning towards B2B. But I don't think that David Benavidez, I wouldn't want to see him fight Crawford. Listen, David Benavidez is a fighter that is big, young, and strong. He's got power, but his skill set is not developed yet. He hasn't been tested. He hasn't fought his way up the ladder. He's been fighting the same level of opposition. A lot of people wanted him to fight Canelo. I could see why Canelo is hesitant to fight him. And the reason is not because Canelo's afraid of David Benavidez's skill set, because the skill set's not there. Canelo has the advantage over skill set. But what is there is youth. And if you read my favorite short story about boxing, it's all about youth always prevails. It's called A Piece of Steak by Jack London. If you've never read it, read it. If you need a copy of it, email me and I'll send you a copy. It got me into the sport, and I've never looked back. And it sums up the sport of boxing, and it's a great read. It's called A Piece of Steak, and it's written by Jack London. Lastly, I'm over my time. He says, as for this weekend, now this is my man Rick, even though he's a Dolphin fan, my man Rick, and it's time-stamped, Saturday morning, 11:11 a.m. He says, as for this weekend, I'm going with Daniel Dubois. I hope he knocks out Anthony Joshua and makes him have another breakdown. Well, all I can say to Rick is, congratulations, my man. You hit that one right on the head, almost as much as Dubois hit Anthony Joshua. Hey, listen, boys and girls, I really appreciate it. I know I rambled on about England, but that was my topic today. England carries boxing on its back. If you have any thoughts about that, drop me an email, billy@talkinboxing, TALKINBOXING.com, or any other thing you want to talk about. Drop me an email, and I'll discuss it on the show, and we'll go from there. And that means you too, Randy Gordon, if you're still listening. Let me get back on your show and talk to me. You know, he's so hesitant to let me get on his show. But in any event, I'm going to get Jimmy Birchfield to come on the show soon, and we'll talk about grassroots promoters. Hey, listen, thanks for stopping by, and make sure you tune in next time, same bat channel. Until then, all I could say is